Good evening. Just yesterday, the CDC's Advisory Panel on Vaccines, they got together and they had a very important meeting regarding serious adverse reactions that people have been experiencing after taking the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And after several hours of actually combing through the research, they unanimously voted to not recommend the Johnson shot to the general public. Meanwhile, earlier this week, in a televised interview over in Ohio, Joe Biden made the false claim that those who are vaccinated can no longer spread the virus. And the reason that we know that that's a false claim is because the CDC, on their very own website, says the exact opposite. However, do not go looking for that information over on Twitter, because just earlier this month, Twitter made a very quiet change to their terms of service, and they officially labeled the fact that unvaccinated people can still spread the virus as being a form of misinformation. Let's go through it all together. This is your daily Facts Matter update, and I'm your host, Roman, from the Epoch Times. And now let's begin today's discussion by talking about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So just yesterday, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, which is a panel of experts who give advice to the CDC on the topic of vaccines, they met, they got together, and they discussed a certain severe condition that has been linked to the Johnson & Johnson shot. Now, before we get into their meeting itself, I want to give you a bit of background on this whole case. The severe condition in question here is known as TTS, or thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome, which is a very technical name, but plainly, the syndrome presents itself as a combination of blood clots as well as a drop in platelet levels. Now, you might remember how back in the spring, the concern around TTS was so heavy that there was an almost nationwide pause in the administration of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. However, that pause was eventually lifted because the FDA came in and they made the official determination that the benefits of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine outweigh any potential risks. However, since then, more evidence has emerged linking this particular syndrome to the Johnson & Johnson shot. Specifically, according to this paper here, which was just published last month by researchers with the CDC, they found that people who got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine were far more likely to experience this particular syndrome when compared to people who got either the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine. And in that particular paper, the researchers were looking at the number of adverse reactions which were reported through the VAERS system. And the VAERS system, in case you've never heard of it, stands for the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, which is run jointly by the FDA and the CDC, and it's a place where people can go and report any adverse reactions that they have experienced from any vaccine. And so, according to the VAERS system, when looking at this particular syndrome, meaning TTS, here are the numbers that you find. There were 3.55 cases of TTS reported for every million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine which were administered. Compare that to only 0.0057 cases per million for the other vaccines, meaning that although it's still rare no matter which shot a person takes, the instance of it happening with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a whopping 621 times more than the other vaccines. And furthermore, it was found that the rate was highest among women aged 30 to 39. Now, following the release of that specific paper, we here at the Epoch Times, we actually went in and we reviewed the database for ourselves, and we found that as of December 16th, so as of yesterday, there have been 1,700 cases of TTS which followed the administration of a Johnson & Johnson vaccine. There were also 1,429 separate reports of thrombosis, as well as 265 reports of thrombocytopenia. Altogether, the conditions were said to have resulted in 89 deaths. Although it is worth noting that the VAERS system is a passive reporting system that anyone can report to. Although, according to previous studies, they have actually indicated that the number of reports which are submitted to the VAERS system is usually an undercount, meaning that since it is a passive system, there are likely many more cases which just never go reported. Regardless though, even with the data that has been reported, the FDA decided to take action. Earlier this week, the FDA updated their fact sheets for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and they added a warning, specifically to people who have had a history of TTS following vaccination to not get the Johnson & Johnson shot, meaning that TTS is now listed as a contraindication, and so people can potentially obtain a medical exemption to any vaccine mandate if they've ever experienced TTS as an adverse reaction to any other vaccine. However, although earlier in the week they released a warning, the FDA also published this statement as well. The FDA continues to find that the known and potential benefits of the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine outweigh its known and potential risks in individuals 18 years of age and older. Individuals should speak to their healthcare provider to determine which COVID-19 vaccine is most appropriate for their own situation. And then furthermore, after the FDA updated their warning, Johnson & Johnson, they released an official public statement saying that they have been all along working on both understanding as well as communicating all known risks, and that they, quote, strongly support raising awareness of the signs and symptoms of this rare TTS event. Now, this story actually goes a lot deeper because everything that we've discussed thus far is just the background information for that meeting that the CDC panel held yesterday. And after that panel got together, after they met, and after they watched about 4 hours worth of presentations, they then subsequently voted, and they unanimously agreed that the CDC should tell the general public that the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are preferred over the Johnson & Johnson. Here's specifically what their recommendation states. mRNA COVID-19 vaccines are preferred over the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine for the prevention of COVID-19 for all above 18 years of age. Now, although both the CDC as well as the FDA still say that the benefits of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine outweigh the risks, the high mortality rate, as well as the fact that Americans can get 2 other brands of vaccine, led these panel members to vote the way they did. For instance, here's how Dr. Pablo Sanchez, who's both a professor of pediatrics as well as a member of this panel, here's how he justified his vote. I just cannot recommend a vaccine that is associated with a condition that may lead to death. I think we have other vaccines. Now, there has been some criticism surrounding how seriously the panel is taking the issue of TTS linked to Johnson & Johnson, whereas they seem to have placed a lower emphasis on the heart inflammation that is known to be linked to the other mRNA vaccines. However, Dr. Lynn Bada, who is another member of this CDC advisory panel, she said that the reason that the panel is treating TTS differently than heart inflammation is because of the difference in mortality rate. Here's specifically what she said. We do see a higher frequency of myocarditis, but the severity of TTS is a driving factor for this recommendation. Now, this unanimous vote by the panel is not necessarily binding. This is, after all, just an advisory panel, which, as the name suggests, only advises the CDC on what they should do. However, it looks like the CDC is going to be taking their advice. That's because just a few hours after the panel's unanimous vote, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, who is the director of the CDC, she came out and she endorsed their recommendation. Here's what she said in a statement. Today's updated recommendation emphasizes CDC's commitment to provide real-time scientific information to the American public. I continue to encourage all Americans to get vaccinated and boosted. And naturally enough, the stock price for Johnson & Johnson, it took a nosedive when this news came to light. Now, thus far, the CDC has not officially released any new recommendations based on the panel's vote. However, based on the statement from Dr. Rochelle Walensky, which appears to endorse their decision, it looks like they will in the very near future. In fact, some of the panel members, they're actually suggesting recommending the Johnson & Johnson shot only to those who, for some reason, cannot take either the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccines. So it would essentially be a backup option. And that looks like what might actually happen, since there were several CDC officials who came out and they said that these recommendations would be incorporated into their updated clinical guidance for healthcare workers who actually administer the vaccines around the country. So that's something that we can look forward to in the next week or so. If you'd like to read more about this particular case regarding this high instance of TTS among the people who have taken the Johnson & Johnson shot, I'll throw several links into the description box below this video for you to check out. And all I ask in return is that you take a quick moment to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. And now let's move on over and talk about censorship. What's this? Well, that's a great question, Roman, and it is today's sponsor, which is an awesome messaging and email service provider called Secure. And it's awesome if you're the type of person that actually cares about their privacy. Because, I mean, it's no big secret that these big tech companies are mining and remining our data all the time. In fact, in the year 2020, it was found that over 155 million Americans, likely including you and me, have suffered some form of data breach. And by the way, that's only what's publicly known. However, what's happened in the past, well, that can stay in the past, because with Secure, your data and your messages can remain private. And that's because Secure has all of their data centers located over in Switzerland rather than in the US or in China. And the reason that's so important is that Switzerland has some of the strictest data privacy laws in the entire world, and they are not subject to the Intrusive Cloud Act. And if you want to know what the Cloud Act is, head on over to secure.com and watch their video on the homepage or on the video tutorials page, which is under their support section. Now, the thing that I personally love the most about the Secure app is the privacy aspect of it. They don't mine my data. They don't mine my phone number. They don't mine the phone numbers or data of my friends and family who I chat with. But best of all is that if your friends and family don't actually use the Secure app themselves, it doesn't matter. Because the way that it works is that when you use their Secure Send email technology, all of your emails and your messages route out to Switzerland, and then the recipient can reply using their secure reply technology, and so everything remains private no matter what. And the same actually goes for their messaging app as well. And they're always coming up with new features. In fact, the most recent one they told me about, they sent me an email here, was that they're coming up with a new feature called text to chat by invite. So they're an innovative company, and they really do care about your privacy. And so what they're doing doesn't work with your existing big tech email account. So check them out. You can head on over to secure.com. I'll throw the link into the description box below. And when you use promo code Roman, you can get 25% off. And the rates are not even that expensive to start with, by the way. It's only $5 for the messenger and $10 for the email and messenger combo. And they even offer a 7-day free trial. So head on over to their website. Again, it'll be linked in the description box below. Use promo code Roman to save some money. And now, Roman in the studio, back to you. And now let's move on over and talk a bit about censorship. And to start with, earlier this week, Joe Biden made a very interesting statement. During a speech, he falsely claimed that people who are vaccinated can no longer spread the virus. Specifically, while speaking to an Ohio-based TV station, here's what Joe Biden said. "This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, not the vaccinated, the unvaccinated. That's the problem. Everybody talks about freedom, about not to have a shot or have a test. Well, guess what? How about patriotism? How about you make sure you're vaccinated so you do not spread the disease to anybody else? What about that? What's the big deal?" Then, while speaking to another TV station, also in Ohio, here's what Joe Biden said again. "Those who aren't vaccinated are the ones that continue to spread the diseases. People should get vaccinated so you're not spreading anything else." Which sounds well and good, except for the fact that it's not necessarily true. And how do we know it's not true? Well, here's what it says on the official CDC website. Vaccinated people can still become infected and have the potential to spread the virus to others, although at much lower rates than unvaccinated people. Furthermore, during an interview just a few months back, here's what Dr. Rochelle Walensky said while discussing the very same topic over on CNN. "Our vaccines are working exceptionally well. They continue to work well with Delta with regard to severe illness and death. But what they can't do anymore is prevent transmission." And then furthermore, Dr. Fauci himself published a paper just 2 days ago on Wednesday, which said this in part. "The duration of vaccine effectiveness in preventing COVID-19, reducing disease severity, reducing the risk of death, and the effectiveness of the vaccine to prevent disease transmission by those vaccinated are not currently known." However, if you are currently browsing Twitter and looking for these statements from the CDC or from Dr. Fauci, which state that vaccinated individuals can still spread the virus, well, then you are not in luck. That's because just earlier this month, Twitter updated their rules and they now penalize people who claim that vaccinated individuals can still spread the virus. Let me just repeat that. In a very quiet change to their terms of service, Twitter added an addendum which states that if you share information regarding how vaccinated people can still spread the virus, you will be penalized. Here's specifically what they updated their terms of service to read on December the 2nd. "False or misleading information regarding the safety or science behind approved or authorized COVID-19 vaccines, such as," and this is what they added, "false or misleading claims that people who have received the vaccine can spread or shed the vaccine or symptoms or immunity to unvaccinated people." And if you dare to share such content anyway, well, here's what Twitter might do to your account. When tweets include misleading information about COVID-19, we may place a label on those tweets that includes corrective information about that claim. In cases where we determine there is potential for harm associated with the misleading claim, we will disable the ability for others to retweet, quote tweet, or engage in other ways to prevent the spread of the misleading information. These tweets will accrue 1 strike in accordance with our strike policy stated below. Which is interesting to consider because, for instance, if you post an interview clip with Dr. Rochelle Walensky with her saying that vaccinated people are still capable of spreading the virus, according to those Twitter guidelines, Twitter will then add a label to the bottom of your post, which will then take you to an authoritative source, such as the CDC's own website, which will confirm exactly what Dr. Walensky said in the clip. Sometimes I feel like I'm living somewhere between the years 1983 and 1985. Regardless, we here at the Epoch Times, we reached out to Twitter for comment on their new policy, but we have yet to hear back. Furthermore, if you'd like to see a very interesting clip regarding the subject, well, here is Fox News' White House correspondent, Mr. Peter Doocy, asking the White House press secretary about why exactly Joe Biden said what he said.
President Biden telling people still that the vaccinated cannot spread COVID.
Can you say more?
Yeah, in a local interview on Tuesday, he said, "How about making sure you're vaccinated so you do not spread the disease to anybody else?" The CDC says people who get vaccine breakthrough infections can be contagious.
Well, I'll say this. I didn't hear this interview, so I would have to see it in its full context. What I know and what the president believes is that we have to listen to the science, we have to listen to our public health officials, and that's what the president believes.
If you'd like to read more about either Joe Biden's interesting comments or about this new policy from Twitter, I'll throw the links to several articles about all of that into the description box below this video for you to check out. And again, all I ask in return is that if you haven't already, take a quick moment to smash that like button, which forces the YouTube algorithm to share this video out to potentially thousands of more people, letting the truth be known far and wide. And actually, if you'd like to continue the discussion on this particular topic, I would highly recommend that you go on over to epochtv.com, where Jan spoke with Dr. Stephen Templeton, and they discuss how the combination of a media frenzy and COVID panic made American people obsessively risk-averse as well as germophobic. Here's a trailer for that awesome episode.
I call it a safety culture problem, where we want to mitigate risk to the point where there's no risk, complete risk aversion.
If you want to be optimally protected, you really should get a booster.
The probability of something happening is less important now than the possibility it will happen.
At the inaugural conference of the Brownstone Institute, we sat down with Dr. Stephen Templeton, an associate professor of immunology and microbiology at the Indiana University School of Medicine. Safety culture and mass germophobia have taken over society, he says, and it could have devastating consequences down the line, just like the overuse of antibiotics.
I didn't want to look back on this and say that I violated my conscience and didn't speak up when someone really needed to.
If you want to check out that great episode as well as all the other phenomenal content over on Epoch TV, I'll throw a link to it. It'll be right there at the very top of the description box. I hope you click on it. Hope you check it out. I hope you subscribe. And I hope that you join us on this journey of exploring this beautiful, beautiful world through honest journalism that is based in truth and tradition. Now, lastly, if you haven't already, smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already, in order to get this type of honest news content delivered directly into your YouTube feed while YouTube still allows it. Also, consider hitting that notification bell so you can actually be notified of any new videos as we release them. Lastly, if you have a Telegram account, consider following me at FactsMatter_Roman. It's a great alternative to Twitter, and in case anything ever happens here on YouTube, you can always find the links to our videos on there. And then, until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed and stay free.